Hello, everyone, and happy holidays to you all. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and welcome to the first episode of the December lineup. I am so excited to share with you all the amazing guests I have slated for this month. And in this episode, I'll be showcasing an author who I am very excited to learn more about their work. And this guest is an individual that I met at LA Comicon. Now, he is also a screenwriter as well as an author, as well as an alumni from UCLA's famed theater, film, and television professional program. And I had the opportunity to meet this incredible person at LA Comic Con. And at his booth, he told me the most amazing story. That story is, of course, Gladiator Bots, in which a man who hates technology is forced to fight Gladiator Bots. But the more he wins, the less human he becomes. Jericho must fight off against his nemesis, Dominick Everbleed, to save the kingdom and the beautiful and vivacious Princess Halation from his tyrannical takeover. But there's a twist. As his human parts consistently become replaced with machines, Jericho is left with a choice. Will he become a hero or a mind controlled villain? And to tell us all about that and more, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest and the start of the December lineup, Mr. Kevin Allison. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me. That was a great introduction, by the way. I think my job is done. You just explained the whole movie in a nutshell.
Oh man, oh man. Thank you, Kevin. I really, really do appreciate that. Now, before we dive into Gladiator Bots, is there anything else you'd like to share with the viewers and listeners?
yeah. Well, I'd like to share that I've done a sequel to this book, and I'm currently working on it now. I think we're going to bring back the same familiar characters, same usual suspects, the artists, and the different people involved in producing this original book, the origin story. But I think they're going to be blown away by this sequel because I'm going to be revealing some things that probably have never been revealed in any storylines before. You won't find duplicate ideas and storylines. It'll be something that is really original and mind-boggling, and at the same time intriguing. So, you guys look forward to that sequel. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself here because we haven't even delved into this great story. But just to give you guys something to look forward to after this is over, yeah, I'm just pretty excited about being done with that second story.
Awesome. And diving right into the beginning question, as I mentioned in the introduction, my viewers and listeners, Kevin is the author behind Gladiator Bots, which is an amazing story. When he told me about it, when he gave me the pitch, I was just blown away because I love the concept of, fighting, but every limb gets replaced. And it's like you become more machine than man, but how far are you willing to go to protect your humanity? And do you still view yourself as human? So, before we dive into that, Kevin, I like to dive into your background first. So, let's just dive right into the first question. So, for you, Kevin, growing up, were you always a creative person or did that come about later in your professional life?
Yeah, so I think I've always been super creative as a child. I've always had bouts with daydreaming and just thoughts just wandering and drifting while other people may be engaged in conversation. I might just wander off in my mind's eye and just think of different ideas and stories and things of that nature. And as a kid and as a child, early on, I was always drawn to sci-fi,
Mm-hmm.
and I would watch films and televisions for hours hours and hours at a time. And I always found myself pondering, even as a kid, about storylines. One of the things that also stands out in my memory as a child is not having a whole lot of money. And my mother would take me and my siblings to the drive-in theaters. And for millennials, that's like 100 years ago. We used to go to drive-ins in your cars and watch movies. But sometimes we didn't have enough money, so my mother would park outside of the theater, and we look through the back window of the big giant screen. And as we're right, so as we're watching this action take place, my creative mind had to fill in what the dialogue was and what the plots were, and it was just an exercise, to make the film seem more interesting. And I think that kind of helped me creatively. Even to this day, I think I haven't really ever had a bout with writer's block, although I will say that I am comfortable with developing the story for months and even years at a time until I get it right in my mind. So, yeah, I think being a creative child has helped me as an adult.
Awesome. So now let's jump forward ahead in your journey. So what was your aha moment for you when you realized you wanted to transform your passion into a career, into a business? Can you walk us through that moment?
Yeah. So writing was pretty important to me. I found it very interesting how someone can create a story with words and be very descriptive and allow someone into your mind, but they have all the sensory information that was written on paper with words. And I used to do lyrics and raps and all that stuff as a high schooler, but eventually I found myself at college. One of my first colleges I went to was Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And I had a buddy who was a serious actor. He was in California. I was in Atlanta. He was also a comedian, so he would tour the U.S. And one of his tours happened to stop right in Atlanta, where I was staying as a college student. And he had just got casted for a John Singleton movie.
Ooh.
And he brought the script, and I had never read a script before. And so he showed me the script, and I read it in one night because I was so captivated by how they could just create a world with just a small amount of words, and you get the whole experience and the visceral experience page by page. And as I finished reading the script, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to write screenplays.
Nice.
Without the formal training, though, but I still was set to learn how to do it at that point.
That's amazing. That is really, really incredible. And I've noticed a trend. I've actually had a few guests who have backgrounds in screenwriting. And for them, when it comes to, going from that mindset of a screenwriter to an author, the transition is easier, or I don't say easier, but it's more fluid. And I was wondering if that's almost the same thing for you, or maybe it's different.
Well, when you say transition from a screenwriter to an author of, you mean books?
Yes, books or outlines for comics or stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty smooth transition, although the composition type might be a little different. The way you write in a novel versus the way you write in a screenplay can be totally different, only because I like to use this term, economy of words. For screenplays, you have to really condense all that stuff and economize your words to really paint a vivid picture versus
Mm.
when you're writing a novel, so to speak, you have a lot of time to work things out. But the beauty about writing novels is the similes, the metaphors, and all these different ways to describe something. You can be very heavy handed and very, very creative with it. Um, let me see if I can give an example of what I'm saying here. Like describing someone being nervous. I've read somewhere where in a novel they've described someone being as nervous as a porcupine in a hot air balloon. So with that, you kind of get the vivid imagery of someone who's nervous and at any second something can go wrong. Or the other one, nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Um, and the list goes on and on. You get that in novels. You don't really get it in screenplays, but I like to incorporate things like that into my screenplay. So when you're reading it, you can really see the color. Busier than a hot dog. I mean, busier than a dog with fleas. Like, okay, I'm going to describe this town. We go to this town, it's a small town, but the folks there are hardworking and they're busier than a dog with fleas on a hot day. So you kind of get what I'm saying without me saying
Right.
a whole lot.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's actually really true. In fact, a lot of my, I guess, the guests who are screenwriters, they almost said the exact same thing, that when it comes to describing, screenwriters have this kind of like a little edge where, as you said, they are able to describe the same thing, but in few words. And
Yeah.
in sense, going to, like, say, writing a book, that mentality of like, okay, how can I be very descriptive, get the point across in the few amount of words? And it reads very much like a story, which I absolutely find very fascinating. And almost with that same mindset, let's now actually turn into the book in question, Gladiator Bots. I'm really intrigued to see how that came about. So, as like a first little icebreaker question, when you began writing the initial outline of Gladiator Bots, did you have an idea of the goals you set out for yourself, as well as the goals and promises to your prospective readers and audience?
Okay, so to be clear, Gladiator Bots came about in a class that I took at UCLA for screenwriting. And it was sort of I describe it as a broiler room because you had other talented writers. And our assignment was to just come up with a screenplay. And normally, since I have produced movies, micro budgeted films for like 50 grand, I would write within those budget constraints. And that means there's no special effects, there's no this, that, or the other. It's just a few people in a room and very few scenes. However, with this assignment, I felt very free and emancipated from budget restrictions.
Hmm.
Therefore, with my love for sci-fi, I was driven to basically create something that was never created before by taking storylines that have been created before, something you've seen before, but I guess meshing them together and taking them to a higher concept. So, of course, you have to have an outline for what your hero is going to be about.
Mhm.
And I kind of took Gladiator and RoboCop and I fused them together and I pushed it to a higher concept with the exchanging of body parts and things of that nature and set it in the future. And it just gave it a different tone and feeling. So it allowed me to create something that was interesting and intriguing, and at the same time using the hero's journey, um, basically where your hero starts off one way and then he ends up another way by the end of the film, using all those techniques to get me to the end of the film. It became something that was really great and people really liked. Um, and just for marketing, or my platform was going to be a love triangle. So love triangles
Mhm.
are universal, and everyone can kind of see the marketing in that. You have three people embroiled in an emotional battle. along with the other stuff that takes place. So there's some universal themes in there, like identity and um, sacrifice, and a few other things you can point out that happens in the story, and it just comes together just beautifully. And in the class at UCLA, we would sit and have open discussions about every page we have had written, and some of the comments were encouraging, and some were uh, could be discouraging, and you just have to have thick skin, and um, you took what you wanted to take out of the discussion, and by the end of the assignment, you hope to come up with a great story. And I believe that I did that in class. I came up with a great story.
And from what you've just told me, it really is a great story. I mean, idea of like Gladiator and RoboCop fused together. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. And honestly, the concept is it's something that's never been done before. Like we've never had like robot gladiators like set in the future. I love that concept. And then you mentioned, feedback from the class. Is there one feedback in particular that has stuck with you that makes you reflect on your journey thus far with this story?
Um, well, let me see if I can recall. I did have some negative feedback. I had some individuals that didn't believe in the story.
Mm.
Because there was a competition also,
Yeah.
like the winner of the competition, and it was a class competition, will go on to face other winners of the other classes, and then I don't know if there was a cash prize or something like that. And I actually did not win.
Mm.
Even though I thought I had the best story in class, I didn't win. However, it just doesn't mean that your story isn't good. It just means that someone had a personal favorite, and they decided that it was going to be the one that moved on to further competition. Now, you got to have thick skin. Just
Right.
because someone doesn't like your story doesn't mean that the story isn't good. And one perfect example of that was I decided to enter the screenplay into the Oscars has a international screenwriting competition annually. So I
Mm-hmm.
entered it in there, and boy, it did pretty good. I mean, it got down to almost the finals.
Wow.
And one of the judges emailed me, and he let me know that okay, your story isn't going to win because most of the judges had their particular favorites. And he was like, I was trying to encourage them to get on board and whatnot, but despite that, it was like, this story should be made into a movie, and keep going with it. Don't stop pushing it. So, with that said, it just reminds me of all the talent competitions we've seen on TV with
Mm-hmm.
dancing and singing, and how superstars like a Justin Timberlake loses as a kid, but then he becomes a great big rock star, or Beyonce loses as a kid, but then she becomes. It's like just because these competitions may reject you doesn't mean that you don't have what it takes. So that stuck with me for the longest, and it still sticks with me today. Just never give up.
That is amazing. And I've actually had someone say that with like my first story as well. And that was, a really incredible feeling to hear someone say, this has so much potential that it can branch out into other medias, which we will touch on later in the interview. So from that moment, and then progressing through your journey and fine tune this story, would you say that those reactions and reviews, both positive and negative, have in a way validated your goals with the story, that you want to tell a story that's never been done, that's original, that's completely new, but at the end, to its core, it's a great story that's going to captivate the audience.
Well, yeah, I mean, I believe that, people are going to have their own personal likes and quirks and idiosyncrasies. And if I even said that word right, I'm sipping on a little bit of champagne here. But there are going to be people who aren't going to be on board, and there are going to be people who support you. And you have to just be an artist. I'm at heart an artist. I just want to create,
Mm-hmm.
and I just want to produce something and give it to the world, and then let them decide. And there are going to be some people who love it and some people who hate it. They're going to knock it, and some people are going to say it's a critically acclaimed. It's the greatest story we've ever heard. So I'm able to, as an artist, accept all things because we're vulnerable. I mean, when we
Mm-hmm.
do this stuff, we have to be vulnerable. And if you're not and you're defensive, then I think that kind of stops creativity from flowing. And then also I'm inspired when someone says they don't like it, or if they try to knock it, or what have you. Sometimes that inspires me to go out and do some of my best work, because now I have a chip on my shoulder and I want to dig deeper into, okay, how can I become better? What do I have to do to become a better writer? And it's a challenge, and I love challenges.
Absolutely. And you actually touched on something that leads into another great question, which is what I like to call a reflective question. Because as you said just now, Kevin, that for all creators, for all artists, there has to be some level of vulnerability because we're going to be creating something that's going to be published out on the digital world that's going to be received or not received. There's going to be feedback, positive, negative, and mix. And there is that level of anxiety that comes along with it of whether or not it's going to be well received. Is my message going to get across? Is my target audience going to be accepting of it? And ultimately, you also have imposter syndrome come into the room, which is a huge, huge killer for creators, making all of us, reconsider our choices, our paths, our journey, etc. So I'm wondering for you, Kevin, if you've ever had those moments of anxiety or imposter syndrome, and if so, what has disciplined you to keep going and sharing this story, because this is an amazing story.
I mean, you have bouts with anxiety daily. I mean, you just have to learn how to mitigate it and manage it, and just know that, try to keep an even keel. Don't get too excited and don't get too depressed. And just keep moving forward with, your creative ideas, because I think creativity begets creativity.
Mm,
Once your anxiety starts stopping you and stifling you from being creative, then you fall into like some kind of just I don't want to say depression, but you fall into like a little rut.
right.
So the best way to keep going is to just keep creating. And some things are hit and miss. I think with this story, we hit it out the park. It's critically acclaimed for a reason. And we recently went to Frankfurt, and we got rid of all our books. I mean, everything went. People love the story out there, and we're in Germany. I mean, we're in a different place, but obviously there's some universal theme here that people can identify with, despite the language barriers or cultural barriers. I think in the zeitgeist right now, there is an element of man versus machine, AI versus, humans,
Hmm.
robots eventually doing what humans do. And then how long will it take for that to evolve into combat robots? And then how long will that take? How long will it take to evolve into, okay, now we have robots that'll play football against humans, or we're going to challenge humans on all levels. At what point do we humans say, okay, do we push back, Does it become dangerous? Where is it helpful for us? And who's able to take this and control it to where it hurts us or helps us? All those
Mhm.
questions are abound. And, as a free thinker and someone who's creative, a story like this comes about. And we see it in movies every day. I mean, it's not the first one about man versus machines,
Mhm.
obviously not, but it's just a different take on it. And it becomes more prevalent as we get closer to, having a proliferation of AI, and my lead character hates technology. He hates AI, but he has to depend on it just for, his daily functions. But the biggest fear has set in. He's going to become AI, and he's going to lose his memory. He's going to lose everything, his human touch, everything, because he's forced to fight to gain freedom, and he has to lose his humanity one piece, one body piece at a time. So
Mhm.
it's an intriguing story with a lot of themes in it. And I think it's already in our atmosphere, is already out there, that we are embroiled in a battle amongst ourselves and AI.
That is very, very powerful, Kevin. And it is very, very true. And it actually reminds me of actually a film I saw on Netflix not too long ago, which touched almost what you're talking about in Gladiator Bots. It's a French film, and it's a world where technology and AI has gotten so advanced that you now have athletes augmenting themselves to make them better athletes, and you have the natural borns, as they're called, who are still doing it the old fashioned way. They don't want technology, they don't want to be augmented, but that is the nature of the game. So it's very fascinating. And you're right, this story of, man versus machine has been talked about in numerous forms in different medias. But for this one, I really do appreciate that it's given like a facelift, a fresh take, which now leads into the business portion of the intro, which I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on. So let's actually start with the first question. So once you had the story and you wanted it to develop into a graphic novel, what were sort of like your criterias of, finding artists whose artwork matched your story? Because I know that is a very big discussion when translating a screenplay or book into a comic book or graphic novel. And even from there, once you had your team, did you guys want it to market in the traditional category, which is send this to the big comic book industry houses, or did you want to stay independent because it allowed you more creative control and to be almost like a refresher from the superhero genre that has saturated the comic and graphic novel industry?
Okay, so I think you asked like five questions. I'm going to try to hit on all of them. But yeah, but let's talk about what the impetus of me even going to a graphic novel from a screenplay.
All right.
So the impetus was, here I have a screenplay, Gladiator Bots, and that budget is going to be like $200 million.
Mm-hmm.
So I only have words on pages, and it's about 90 pages long. Of course, you can be a great writer, and give your screenplay to someone in Hollywood. But let's face it, screenplays are a dying thing in Hollywood. I mean, because everybody has one. You go to a producer and he has 1,000 screenplays he hasn't even looked at. So the impetus for turning it into a graphic novel came from me doing research. What I researched was that 80% of the sci-fi superhero films that we watched, and not even superhero, it could be a regular drama or a mystery or thriller. Uh, they come from graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood gets these graphic novels and say, "Hey, let's turn it into a movie." So I'm researching and I'm reading this, and that's when the light went off. Like, hey, I can turn this into a graphic novel, and I can use that as a marketing tool to get this project done because the graphic novel offers a producer the visuals he needs to say, "Oh, okay, this is what our sound stage is going to look like. This is what we're going to stage it like, and these are the special effects, and these are the weapons." I mean, it gives them everything that they need right there. It's like a storyboard, so to speak.
Hmm.
So now the words on a regular script become even more. Um, I like to coin the phrase like, okay, a picture is worth 1,000 words,
Right.
but a graphic novel is worth 100 billion words.
I like that.
And so that began my journey to turn it into a graphic novel. So what I did was I researched uh, people who actually make graphic novels. Now, of course, me being creative and all that, I wanted to do it myself,
Hmm.
but that was just a different type of skill set that I did not have. So I researched some of the big movers and shakers in the industry, and I found a guy by the name of Steve Stern who does this for a living, and he also has a great graphic novel himself. And I sent him the screenplay, and he read it. He loved it. Now, of course, I have to pay for his services, but we were able to get our artists and everything we needed it was a one-stop shop. And
Wow.
yeah, so and it took about a year to complete.
Dang.
It took about a year to complete.
And so, with seeing the finished product of Gladiator Bots, do you have a copy that you can share with the viewers? Just again, idea of this incredible story that we're talking about.
When you say share, you mean like show something from the book, like right now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you have it with you, I would love
yeah.
to.
Mhm. I don't know how well. Um, look at some of the covers. Like here's a cover. I don't know if you can see it or not, but
Oh,
that's it.
that is great. That
That's it.
is amazing. That is really really good. My goodness, the artwork is that is stunning, listeners and viewers. I mean, it really does grab the eye, and I absolutely loved it. And it kind of has this. I don't know if it's just me being a '90s kid, but it has that sort of like '90s feel that you would see in like a Saturday morning cartoon. The title, artwork,
Right.
I absolutely love it. Oh, there's the money shot. There it is. Yeah, that would definitely be like uh uh poster art for a '90s show. I mean, badass spots. I mean, it says it right there. That is incredible, Kevin. So
Yeah,
from there,
that artist is out of Brazil. His name is Thiago. It was an international um, collaboration of sorts. The cover art was from um, a guy named Alan Kwa, who is out of Singapore, and he's with DC now, if I'm not mistaken. And the guy who did the actual art in the book uh, is Nino, and he's out of the Philippines. So we have an international coalition here going to create the book.
awesome. That's actually really nice. I love that you had this amazing team to bring this vision to life. So now let's
Yes.
actually talk about more of the marketing. So one thing I always like to talk with my guests in this portion of the interview is the audience, because the audience is a huge thing. Now, for us creators, we're the target audience first and foremost when we're creating our stories. Like we know our stories better than anyone else. But when we go about publishing it and sharing it with a wider audience, it's important to really know, okay, I got to switch off the creative brain and I now got to go into the business mindset. So this is a two-part question, Kevin. The first part is, even in the screenplay stage before transitioning into a graphic novel, did you have already an idea of who the audience would be? And in your opinion, when should a creator consider the audience?
Okay. Yeah, you should have an idea who the audience should be, and you should always consider the audience when you're writing. As far as like marketing, one of the other endeavors I had for my education was I went to Penn State and I majored in psychology and business. And marketing was one of my cornerstones of business. And yeah, so on the outset, you know that this film is going to be testosterone driven. You're going to have a support of men, probably between the ages of like I don't know, 15 on up to maybe 50 years old. But marketing wise, uh, you probably would get more money if you can include women to buy into it. So
Mm-hmm.
marketing wise, that's the reason why I made it a love triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Novela. Some lady told me it reminded her of a novela. And I thought it was a great compliment because that means that women can also get involved in. And I know there's a lot of blood and guts and all that stuff, but then there's a gentle, sensitive side too of a man who loves a woman who has lost his woman and has to find a way to get her back. And when it looks bleak, you know, the emotional meter goes way higher, you know. So I, of course, wanted to include women on this story as well. So when it does open up in theaters, it can be a date movie, so to speak, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, the guys could just, you know, get their testosterone levels boosted as well because they're seeing a lot of great action. But
Yep.
there is a gentle, sensitive side, and so yeah, I considered those audiences when I wrote the first page.
Awesome. And that kind of leads into another question, which I really want to hear your thoughts on. But I'll give some groundwork for this one because it actually comes from a guest I had earlier this year. Shout out to Eric Bowden for this. This question is amazing. So, initially, the original question I had for this portion was, who are your role model authors, screenwriters, movie directors, etc.? But Eric decided to turn the question up on its head and says, like, I can list all those people, but at the end of the day, I'm not trying to be like those people. I want to be myself. And he brought up a good point, which is for creators, we find ourselves in this balancing act where we want to show reverence and respect to the source material that have inspired us, the titans of the industry who have been role models, but at the end of the day we want to show our individuality as creators. And he gave a perfect example. There have been books that have had like a mix of so and so. Case in point, Victor Milan's Dinosaur Knights, which some reviewers have called the love child between Jurassic Park and Game of Thrones. I've never read either of those books, but I immediately was sold on the concept. And from a reader's perspective, that is enticing. But from an author's perspective, may not be so helpful because it kind of pigeonholes us into either one category of writing, one style of writing. And as creators, we shouldn't be shackled to what genre or what style or what anything. We want to be creative. So for you, Kevin, how did you sort of balance this out for yourself with Gladiator Bots, where you want to show your individuality as a creator, but you also want to show your readers and your audience that these were the movies, the stories, the directors who played a role, no matter how big or small, in the creation of Gladiator Bots?
Well, so one of the things that great artists, painters, writers, whomever, um, do before they find their voice is to study and copy all the other great artists before them.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be going to a museum and just sitting and sketching something that has already been done. by any number of great artists or painters. For me, that meant reading a lot of screenplays of a lot of great writers and watching movies, but for the most part, reading screenplays. Because when you read a screenplay, you understand that this person, especially if they're a real writer, they have a voice, they have a tone, and it's almost like you want to mimic that until you find your own voice. So within my writing, there's a number of different screenplay writers who I have copied. I mean, just
Mm.
straight bit. Like, okay, I want to write like this. I'm gonna, and then eventually, through trial and error, you just find your own voice, your own tone, your own temperament. So I encourage any artist, and they probably already do it anyway. Study the greats. You study the greats, and then you can become great, and I'm on my way to be great, and I truly believe that. But it's only because I'm studying great people, and I'm taking note, and I understand that I'm just a person with flaws,
Mm.
and sometimes I can fall short. But when I can read someone's work and say, "Man, I need to sound just like that," and in mimicking that, find my own voice because a spark goes off. Like, oh wait, I can say it this way, or I could do it that way. You start learning that okay, this is who I am as a writer, and then
Mm.
eventually someone will read your work and they'll copy you a little bit and then find their voice, but not understanding that the network that you created or tapped into goes and touches like 10 or 15 other different writers, unbeknownst to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely have to be exposed to a lot of people within your genre for you to find your voice. And there's also a skill set. You have to know that screenwriting. There's over 3,000 different skill sets as a screenwriter. And I mean, I only knew like a couple of, like maybe a dozen or two in the beginning. But now, and I don't know all of them, but I'm a student of life, so I'm still learning. I'm still learning these things. So I think the best is yet to come. Like I said, I have a sequel to this, Gladiator Bots. I think the story is going to be even more intriguing. It's
Mm.
going to be bigger and better, and I'm looking forward to. I've already taken the notes. I've done the beats, so now it's just about just writing it out and preparing it to go through the same process. Uh, a graphic novel and publishing. Now, I heard you mention publishing. I self published.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a company called Dorrance, which they've been around for 100 years. So you can actually write whatever you want to write, take it to them, they'll compile it for you, and they'll put it out in the market for you.
Awesome. That's actually
Yeah. So
really, really cool. I don't think I've ever heard of this. This podcast. Where is it based out of? If I may ask.
they're out of Philadelphia and easily accessible. I mean, of course, you're going to pay them to do it, but now here's where things get interesting. So, a lot of people they go to Dorrance or other similar companies, and they produce their books, and Dorrance will put it out, or whoever they are will put it out, and they'll ask you if you want to pay for more marketing stuff so more people can be aware. And people usually say no, and they'll just put it out, and they end up on the bookstore somewhere online, and that'll be it. But I didn't know that there are professional uh, talent scouts out there who read these things, and if
Mm.
they feel that you have something good, they will contact you and let you know all these other resources available to take your book to the higher levels. Since you're self published and you own all your rights, you can also get signed to a major publisher.
Wow.
Um, so I had someone contact me about Gladiator Bots, and they were like, "Yeah, out of 20 books that got released this month, you made it in the top five." And
Congratulations for that.
yeah, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a scam. I don't know, whatever. I'm
Right.
apprehensive, but the feedback loop is constantly and consistently the same. It's like, yeah, we had people read it and they suggested that we contact you, and yeah, I have interviews, like how you're interviewing me. I have other, mediums who want to interview me, and I got out to Frankfurt. I'll be in LA for that book festival, which will be in April. That's the second largest book festival in the world. And
Ah,
yeah,
the LA Festival of Books.
yeah, you'll be there, right?
I've always gone to the LA Festival of Books, so my goal is to get there, and ultimately my future. Well, one thing I do want to do is definitely table there myself once I have like enough of my books out there to share with everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and the networking that goes on is amazing. Um, so yeah, you just put it out there and see what happens, and become a published author. And if anything, you can control your own copyrights,
Hmm.
and you can make a movie. You can get a publisher. You can do all these things. It's all available to you. But it starts with getting your project done, getting it published, and getting it out there. That's where it starts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're just almost nearing the end, but I have a few last questions. And you kind of already answered one, but this now comes to probably one of my favorite questions of the interview, Kevin. But I'll lay some context for this one because it's a big one. There's a lot of weight to this, and I love getting responses to this. So I've been doing this podcasting thing now for almost in total 5 years. 3 years
Wow!
audio.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
That's huge.
Yeah, 3 years audio, 2 years on YouTube. Well, now 3 years coming next year. So in total of 6. And I've learned so much from a lot of different authors, screenwriters, historians, academics, etc. And in this industry, of self-publishing, I've come to realize that, well, not just self-publishing, but just publishing in general, that there's two roads for creators: to be known as something and to be something. And for me, to be known as an author is an individual dedicated to marketing, showcasing their work, going on various platforms to get their name out there. To be an author is an individual dedicated solely to the craft of storytelling, not motivated by capital, but it's nice to get a little bit of money here and there. Now, both roads have their own trials, their own hurdles, but I definitely feel, especially for listeners out there who are interested in going into the publishing industry, whether it's independent, traditional, hybrid, this is very important because the one road to be known as something is the most enticing, but it leads to a lot of unrealistic goals and expectations. And a lot of guests have told me that for people who go down that road starting out, they will lose their passion. They will not be satisfied with their work. Their writing is going to show. And if they're going to be solely motivated by the trends and the clicks in the industry, they're not going to make it. Which ultimately comes to this, which is in the publishing world, whether you are traditional, hybrid, or indie, there's no guarantee your first project, your debut project, is going to be the start of your legacy. There are exceptions, of course, in all industries. There are those whose first stories did get them award winning status, and all credit to them. But generally speaking, you have this roller coaster of highs and lows where you'll have good days, you also have bad days. And it comes back to the expectations that you set out with on this journey. And ultimately, Kevin, I would like to hear your thoughts on sort of this topic of discussion in the publishing industry, which is there is no guarantee that your first project is going to guarantee you your legacy or give you the gratification you're looking for, but it should not deter you if creating and being a creator, a storyteller, an artist, etc., is something you're truly passionate about.
Well, so I think I did this in an interview before where I said my character had a dilemma. where he had a passion and then there was a purpose. And sometimes they don't always coincide, sometimes they conflict. But if your passion can become your purpose, then it's the ultimate reward. And when you look at the words passion and purpose, sometimes passion can be something that's just individual. It's for yourself. It's for your gratification. It's well enough that you can just be on your own, just doing it and enjoying it. And then we look at the word purpose, and I could be wrong about this, but I think purpose means that it serves a multitude of
Hmm.
people. It has more than one usage. It has all these things where it encompasses multitudes of people, and if you can mix them together, then, like I said, you're going to be, living in Zen. Now, for me, writing is a passion. I would do it with or without money. In fact, I've done it with or without money. And then also, I wanted to see the reaction of people as they read my works or as I
Hmm.
told them my story. So, without having any money, or without having any promise of money, I wrote Gladiator Bots, where people would have saw that as a waste of time. It was like, you're not going to get 200 million bucks. Why are you doing this? Well, I'm not doing it for the 200 million bucks to make the movie. I'm really doing it because I just love to write and I want to see people's reaction to this story. And it's really a passion for me. And when I make money, then great. If I don't make money, still great because I'm doing something that I really love. So if you're writing just to make money, then that could be kind of tricky because what happens when you're not making money anymore? Do you stop writing?
Hmm.
Rhetorical question. Or if you really are passionate about it and you don't make money, do you still write? Yeah, you know. So I believe mine is out of passion. Others could be for profit, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you got to do what floats your boat. For me, I'm just intrigued by story. I love the journey of a hero, and I love the different elements of making the story. I love the different types of genres of film, from the most intriguing to some of the most boring stories. But to me, if I'm there writing and creating, then I'm in a place where I don't perceive time anymore because I'm doing something I love.
That is probably one of the most beautifully put answers to this question. And I've had a lot of great answers to this, but this one definitely takes the cake. And I love how you say, you brought up a passion and purpose and what they both mean, breaking it down. And I absolutely love that because you are absolutely right in what you said. And also to add to that, also like and believe that uh, how would I say it? Grit becomes talent in the sense that, when we publish our first book, we think it's going to be this, as I said, going back to what I mentioned before, it's going to be the start of your legacy. It may or it may not, but that's fine. You can just continue to write, create, and it may be your
Yeah.
10th, 15th, or 20th creation that really gets your name out there. I had one guest on the show a year ago, Natalie Wright, whose novel, who's everywhere, is Season of the Dragon. That's her 7th book. I didn't know that at the time, but she pretty much said once you have that book that really gets people's attention, you can then say, hey, if you enjoyed this, check out my other ones because boom, you get new readers and you
Yeah.
also get to show your fans who have been with you for all these years the other stuff you've been working on. And I also think before we come to the end, another thing I think you mentioned before, which we can talk about now, is networking. Because I think as independent creators, networking is huge because you can learn so much from so many different people. I've learned so much from all the authors and creators I've interviewed on this show. most of them, if not all of them, have been from Instagram, and they are some of the most wonderful, kindest people I have ever met. So, Kevin, is there anyone or any group of people you want to give a personal shout out to who have helped you not just as a independent creator, but have helped you bring Gladiator Bots to a new set of readers and helped you understand the industry and business a little bit better from when you first started off?
Oh man, I would have to thank everyone because I mean it's it's so new to me. Also, I mean this is my first graphic novel, so I'm learning that the LA Comicon where I met you, and
Mm,
now you have a platform that will distribute to thousands of people. Um, Also, Dorrance itself, when they released the book, you had readers who read it and liked it, and they put me on the path to meet other people. So, I mean, everyone I come in contact with to me is a resource. There's currency in meeting people and networking with people that help push you along the stream of whatever it is you're to become. And there are no little people in this process. Um, and you never know. I mean, the person that you think may not be the person that can help may be the biggest resource ever, you
hmm
know. And then finally, my wife has been like one of my biggest supporters uh, since I started this Gladiator Bot thing. And, you got family members that help as well. When I did the LA Comic Con, my whole entire family, it seemed like, showed up at my booth. And it was just totally encouraging. And it just allowed me to see that you can't do this thing alone. You just can't. I needed people to help uh, draw the characters. Of course, I had to give them input on how to do it, and what the worlds would look like and what they wore and all that stuff. But I needed that help so that this book can come into fruition. I needed to go to Frankfurt so that we can, in my opinion, conquer Europe and get a whole new fan base with the Frankfurt book fair. And the next book fair will be Los Angeles, and then we'll do San Diego Comic Con and back to LA and maybe New York. So all these things are valuable to me because nobody knows Gladiator Bots yet.
Nope.
And I don't mean nobody because people do. People do. People love it. But on the level that I would like it to be at, I'm going to have boots on the ground everywhere so that people can learn about this great story.
hmm
And so I don't discount anybody's help or any one group is more valuable than another group. Again, I bring up Steve Stern, who actually has a great graphic novel on his own, or comic book character by the name of Zen. And this guy's like a rock star in the comic book world. He's been at it for over 30 years, and he helped me with this book. So he's probably one of the greatest resources that I have right now for this book. And I don't think I can thank him enough as far as like getting this project to where it is now. So I think that's
Awesome.
the most I can really say about this.
Awesome, Kevin. Absolutely awesome. And as the final question of this amazing interview, and I think I've already answered it, but maybe you can answer it again. So, with everything you've learned thus far from the people who have helped you, your team, your experience as a screenwriter, and now a graphic novel author, what is your word of wisdom to the countless independent creators watching and or listening to this interview right now?
You have the last word. I mean, no one can tell you who you are, what you are, without your final stamp of approval.
That is perfect. Absolutely a nice little bow tie to this amazing author interview for the first week of December and the first episode of the December lineup. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this late night author interview. I want to give a huge thank you to Kevin for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it. Now, Kevin, before we sign off, where can people find you on social media, purchase a copy of your book, and can you just repeat again the conventions that you will be attending next year?
Okay, so I have a website that will have all my books and interviews, and maybe even this interview. It is www.kevinallison with two L's books.com. Again, that's Kevin E. Allison books with an S.com. And there you'll find the book. You can buy it right there. You'll see some of the tours we took in Frankfurt and some of the interviews. I would like to post this on there if I'm able to. And yeah, you'll buy the book. And then the sequel and any other books that I have will be found right there. Social media. My favorite one is Instagram. You can follow the Gladiator Bots on Instagram, and it's just that it's Gladiator Bots. So it's Gladiator Bots, one word, on Instagram, and you'll be able to find all of the artwork and all of the travels and festivals we've done, and anything else that might be coming will go there first. So yeah, that's where you can find me and where you can find the books. I don't know. Did you ask me anything else after that, or was that it?
Could you just repeat the conventions that you will be attending next year if people want to meet you in person?
Okay, so L.A. Comicon, San Diego. We'll be doing New York. We're going to do the BlurCon in D.C. Um, and there will be more, but it'll be announced on my IG, the Gladiator Bots IG. The book festival will be in April at USC. It'll be my first time going. So I think USC has it on their campus.
Yeah, UCLA, I believe that's the campus. Yeah, that's going to have it.
UCLA. Okay. So yeah, that one, and who knows? I mean, I'm getting calls every day, so I may end up in a town near you. But if you can, purchase the book, get into the universe that we've created, and be prepared for more entertaining stories. And yeah, thanks for listening and just taking the opportunity to get to know me.
Awesome, Kevin. I will link all that down below in the description of this video. And also one final thing, since it is the holiday season, if you're looking for a fantasy read or know someone who is a fantasy lover and looking for a new book to read, definitely check out my third book, Michael, the Last Angel of Earth. If you're a fan of high epic fantasy, tragic heroes, epic team ups, and so forth, there will be a sale opening on the 4th that will run all the way to the end of the month. And I will link it down below when that link is available. So stay tuned. Well, thank you again, my viewers and listeners, for joining us for another author interview. And as I always say, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what guests are you most excited for to see on the show, and what else would you like to see going forward in 2025. Until next time, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out, wishing you all a wonderful night.